Hey guys, hope you're having a good week so far. Last video, I talked to you guys about totalitarianism and how these type of governments really help lead to World War II, especially the rise of Adolf Hitler and the Nazis. Um, Today, guys, we're going to talk about the actual start of the fighting. But before we get to that, we have to kind of cover the situation kind of brewing in Europe with the Nazis. And so, you have um, Hitler, like we talked about, saying, "Hey, I'm going to right all the wrongs of the Treaty of Versailles." So, almost immediately of him taking power, he's going to start building up their military. Remember, there's supposed to be military restrictions as far as no air force. They broke those rules clear back in the 1920s, actually. So they were flying secretly. They're sending German pilots to go practice flying and work on flying combat missions in the Soviet Union. But regardless of that, he's going to step up the Air Force. He's going to start churning out all these tanks, with which they're banned from having tanks. They were only supposed to have 100,000 man army. So he swells the ranks of the German military. So he's already going against the Treaty of Versailles, right? Um, he goes in and says, "Hey, I'm going to unify Germany with Austria." That's against the treaty too. And then also, guys, early into his kind of rule over Germany, he's going to move troops into the Rhine. If you can see my cursor here, kind of this area right here along the French-German border, the Rhine River Valley. That was supposed to be a demilitarized zone, so no militaries occupying there, to kind of keep a buffer between France and Germany. So he goes in and occupies there. And after all this, guys, the Allies, the two most powerful countries in Europe, France and Britain, that had forced this treaty on Germany, they don't uphold the treaty. They don't say, "Hey, you've broken the treaty. We're going to invade. We're going to go after you. We're going to declare war." They don't do that. And so part of that is they feel guilty because I think their politicians by that point had said, maybe our countries were unfair to Germany. Maybe we went too far with the treaty. So that was partially to blame for why they didn't step up and say, "Hey, that breaks the treaty, that violates the treaty, we're going to invade." Because at that time, guys, they're way, way more powerful than Germany was. There's no way Germany, against the combined forces of Britain and France, could have stopped an invasion at that time. It would have been pretty easy. Um, you know, so this kind of behavior basically tells Hitler, "Hey, it's open season. I can get away with making these demands and taking territories and things like that, and they're not going to try and stop me because they don't want war." He thinks they're soft. They're afraid to go to war over it. So this emboldens him, and so guys, by 1938, he's over here saying, "I want the Sudetenland," which that's part of the newly created Czechoslovakia, which they took part of Czechoslovakia. They took part of that, from Germany, to create it after World War One. And that's this territory is the Sudetenland, traditional kind of territory of people that speak German, kind of culturally German people. They're now part of Czechoslovakia. He says, "Hey, I want the Sudetenland back." The Czechs say, "No way, heck no." The French say, "Hey, if you go in and take Sudetenland, it's on. We're going to war." The British do not want to go to war. The Prime Minister at the time, Neville Chamberlain, he would not go to war over Czechoslovakia. He did not want to have to do it, which, the Czechs really could have held their own against the Germans, honestly, because you're talking about um, a country with over 1 million man army. You're talking about a country that's, in most of its area, pretty mountainous. So that's a big advantage for the defender. And then also, Czechoslovakia guys had the greatest, the largest arms factory in the world at the time. And so they certainly had weapons enough to defend themselves against the Germans as well. But Chamberlain and the British, they did not want to go to war over Czechoslovakia. They were like, oh, just give him the Sudetenland and then he'll be happy. He can stop all this craziness. So Chamberlain flies to Germany, to Munich, down in southern Germany, to Hitler's back door, basically, and says, "Hey, can we make a deal? Let's make a deal." And basically, he agrees to not stand in the way. He agrees to get the French support for not standing in the way of the invasion of the Sudetenland, saying, "Okay, you can have the Sudetenland, that territory, and leave the rest of Czechoslovakia alone, and we'll stand back and let you do it." And so Hitler says, "Okay, sounds good," marches in to the Sudetenland, takes it, and then not long after that, a few months later, says, "Okay, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and take the rest of Czechoslovakia as well." And so this really irritates Chamberlain. He goes, "Okay, I know who I'm dealing with now with Hitler. He's a liar. Can't trust him. He gave me his word he would leave the rest of Czechoslovakia alone, and he didn't." And so that kind of sets the stage for, in 1939, guys, when Hitler starts making demands again. Hey, this little area in Poland, called the Danzig Corridor, that you took from Germany after World War I want it back. The Poles better give me it back, or I'm going to send troops in and take it back. This is, German people, they're being attacked. That's what he's claiming, ostracized and things like that. So it belongs in the Third Reich, in Germany, as part of Germany. And he's demanding this. Now Britain's like, oh, heck no, you better not go into Poland. You already lied to us once about Czechoslovakia. We're really not going to stand for it. Obviously, Poland's very close to Russia, to the Soviet Union. They don't want Germany and Hitler, this big enemy to communism, anywhere near the Soviet border. And so they're kind of threatening, hey, you better not move into Poland. And so it looks like, Hitler finally might not get his way. But the issue here, guys, is the Poles and the Russians, remember, the Soviets, they hate each other. And so the Poles are like, we will not have a treaty with Russia. We will not do a treaty with the Soviets. Not going to happen, even though the British are pushing for it. And so Russia doesn't have a treaty to move in and protect Poland against Germany. Meanwhile, late August 1939, Germany, the enemy of the communists, of the Soviets, they come up with a surprise non-aggression pact. A non-aggression pact meaning basically, hey, we agree to not fight each other. And so now they have an open path in the east to invade Poland. So they know that Russia, the biggest, most powerful, closest country to Poland, so there's no Minsk and Belarus guys back then, they are not going to be able to, or they're not going to come step in and fight the Germans if they move into Poland. The British, they're not going to be able to get there. The French, they have to go through Germany to get to Poland. They're not going to be able to get there. So now he's got an open way to invade Poland. And even though Chamberlain once again says, hey, if you go into Poland, we're going to war, I've given them a guarantee. He guaranteed the Poles that Britain would support Poland if Germany invades. September 1st, 1939, the Germans invade Poland. Okay, so there's a mock little attack. They dress up some prisoners in Polish uniforms right across the border in Germany and claim that, the Polish soldiers have attacked a German radio tower, German radio station. And so bunch of baloney. You have over 1 million men coming in and invading a country. That takes a long time to mobilize guys and get those forces exactly where they need to be and everything ready. You can't turn around, have an attack in the middle of the night and then, a couple hours later roll in to another country and start conquering it. Okay, it just doesn't happen. So this was planned. This was staged. It was planned for months now. And so they move in and use their blitzkrieg tactics, these new tactics. We're not doing trench warfare now. These new tactics to really go through Poland very quickly, and within, you know, really a matter of a couple days, the Polish capital Warsaw is the only kind of area Poland able to hold out against the German forces. They're under siege. They, resist for a while, go through this siege for quite some time, several weeks, and then finally they have to give in and surrender. But these blitzkrieg tactics, guys, blitzkrieg means lightning war in German. And so that's what it was they were striking fast. They were using mobility. They were using these new technologies that had just been developed in World War One, of the airplane, of the tank, to really push forward and move in deep into enemy lines, and then they'd kind of zigzag back and forth and really cut a swath of destruction with their armor, and with dive bombing and strafing and things like that, and really cause havoc amongst the defending troops. And so they'd end up being kind of isolated, and then their infantry would come in behind the mobile units and kind of engulf them and either capture them or take them all out. And so this was definitely a new form, and it really was very successful. So Poland falls, guys, in the fall of 1939. And then you have when winter rolls in. So back then, guys, like I said, even back then, we didn't have a whole lot of fighting going on during winter. You had what was known as Sitzkrieg. So, Germany is at war with Britain and France still, even though they conquered Poland. But nothing really happens. Germany, they do go in and take control of Norway. So there's a little bit going on there, but nothing real big. And then, so they basically did that to protect their iron ore supply coming in from Sweden. But anyway, that's really the only thing until spring 1940. Then they renew the attack. They turn west and invade France, and they blitz France. They use the blitzkrieg against France. Same effect. They go right through these troops. You have the French defenses that are lined up along kind of the border of Netherlands and of Germany and France, and they had this big defensive fortification line called the Magi Line, and it was basically the French version of the Great Wall, with these massive defenses and bunkers underneath, and these big guns on there to fire on attackers from Germany. But they didn't complete the whole thing. It didn't run the entire span of the French-German border, and they said, it's this little forest region. Surely they won't be able to really bring anybody through there. Well, the Germans said, hey, looks like an easy spot to go to us. That's what they do. They come in through Germany, come around and flank the French. So they're facing on the Magi line, pointing their guns towards Germany, and then behind them come the Germans. Oh, yeah. And so it's a big rout, guys. The British, they'd sent forces over to help France. They're getting their butts whooped. The French are pleading for planes from Britain and from the U.S., and they're going, sorry, we can't help you. We have to keep our planes in case something happens with our countries. It's a pretty cold-blooded move, but it's going to prove to be very important. So you have, you guys, some of you may have heard of it, the miracle at Dunkirk. A bunch of French and British troops are stuck on the coast. It looks like the Nazis are going to come and wipe them out, and Britain's going to be pretty well defenseless. They really have, the old guard home, a bunch of old men and young boys protecting the home guard, protecting Britain right now. So they'd be pretty vulnerable to attack, and they wouldn't have much of a fighting force anymore. And so miraculously, all these private boats from Britain come across the channel and pick up all these soldiers and ferry them back over to Britain before the Nazis can close in and finish them off. So pretty miraculous save for them. And so this, guys, leads into basically fall. So September, France falls. They are conquered by Germany.